You're listening to the Creative Process Podcast. Here you will discover what drives musicians to create music and how they realise an ambition. I'm your host, Jamie Collin, founder of the online independent music magazine, Overblown. Hey everyone, Dylan from Cloud Nothings is with me today. We talked writing music, lyrics, and working with John Congleton, Steve Albini, and John Goodmanson. We also touched on working with Nathan Williams from Waves and where Dylan plans to take Cloud Nothings' sound next. Will it be pop? Will it be post-punk? Things took a bit of a turn though, and somehow we ended up talking about childhood, social media, and the benefits of personal music to teenagers. So thanks to Dylan for agreeing to be interviewed. Thanks to you for listening, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a cheeky review. Cheers. Kind of an aside, but I really enjoyed your version of Coldplay's Clocks.
Thanks, man. Well, that AV Club website does that sort of like cover song series, and they asked us to do something, and you have to pick something from a list that they send you. But I knew like if we said yes, we were gonna have to stop into their like studio in the middle of a tour and do it, so we weren't gonna have time to like actually learn anything. And Clocks seems easy because it's just that keyboard part over and over. And then eventually we didn't even try to learn that, so we decided to like play it on my phone while we played keyboard over it. And that was what. And then our tour manager kept accidentally setting off the smoke machine in there. That was like not even on purpose. So that was how that all came out. I think it was good. That's like my favorite song we've ever made.
I found it pretty amusing, and I was kind of amused as well that like some people took a pretty bad reaction to it, and I thought that where's the sense of humor gone? You know, it's just a joke.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah, I didn't like read comments or anything. I'm sure they're insane, but like even just like headlines and stuff for like band disrespects Coldplay and things like that. It was just like, what? Like I don't care enough about Coldplay to disrespect them at all. Like they're a band. Like I don't know who would watch that and think it was disrespectful.
Exactly.
I thought it was funny.
What's so sacred about it? Like,
I don't know. I guess it is Clocks. That's my cousin's favorite song. Yeah, that's what's sacred about it.
Maybe,
I offended my cousin. Cousins worldwide.
So the songwriting on Life Without Sound to me sounds a bit more fleshed out and considered than previous albums. Was that a conscious consideration, or am I like widely off the mark?
I think when I was writing it, or I guess I know, when I was writing it, I was alone a lot of the time versus the other records. I had a lot more time to kind of like make a song, go play it with the band, like think about it, keep playing it together. Like this one, I was basically alone for the whole writing process. So I think I got a lot more like in my head about like where things were going and how they would sound, and not necessarily thinking about how they sound just as like a band playing. So I think I got pretty obsessed with like the structure of the things and the way all the songs moved, which I guess we hadn't really done before. And I don't know if I'll do that again because I think I like it more when I get to play with the band a little more.
So you're saying it was quite a different songwriting process this time around. Even though you said you didn't enjoy it, do you think it was productive?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it at the time, and I think it was productive, and I liked the record. It was sort of a return to how I made like the first Cloud Nothing stuff, where I was like I was totally alone. Like there wasn't even a band at all for the first record. Like I was just recording everything myself. And that's fun, you know, and I like doing that. But I think part of the fun of having this band is that it is a band, you know, and it's cool to have input and like the ability to kind of work things out with more people. So yeah, I think for future stuff, that's probably the road we'll keep going down.
What do you think is the benefit of having people to kind of bounce ideas off of?
Well, when you're alone, you just either I'll do stuff and think it's great, or I will just question things over and over and over and over and never get anything done. And I tend more towards the latter of that. It's nice to have other people to just sort of like take you out of that like overthinking mode, you know, and just kind of like, because someone else will just, especially like I work really well with our drummer. He and I have always just been able to like play together really easily. So just playing a song with him like can already just kind of make me think about the song in a totally different way than I ever would have if I was just doing everything myself. So it's just nice to have other people with other brains that you don't have, you know, to work things out with.
tell you whether you're on the right track or whether they think you're on the right track or not.
Sort of, or also even just to like open up a new zone. Like I'll just play something with someone else and hear the song in a way I hadn't heard it before, and be like, oh well, let's follow this one like little part that we got stuck on. Like just it'll become a different song basically by virtue of just working with other people.
Production-wise, the new album's also the most polished one yet. It seems to have been a continuous move towards a more polished sound. And what's attracting you to that move?
I don't know really. It's like accidental. We just keep ending up that way. Like this record, there were all sorts of people who we wanted to produce it, and everything kept like falling through. And then the last minute, finally, like John Congleton was around, so we're like, all right, you're gonna do it. And he was like, all right. So that was kind of just how that happened. Like there were a bunch of other people we were thinking of, but none of it ever really worked out. And his thing is he is a pretty pristine sonic guy at this point in his career, because he started doing like Sleater Kinney records and stuff, and those are pretty Albini sounding almost, just real dry and live. But somewhere down the line, he went pro. So we did too. Yeah, so the record's very clean. And that was just kind of like I said, not an accident necessarily, because we could have forced it to be a different way, I guess. But it is just sort of the way things turned out. Yeah.
You worked with John Congleton and Steve Albini, as you mentioned. So why did you want to work with them?
Basically, I don't know why it's always been this way, but like someone just said, we had a manager at the time, and they were like friends with John Congleton. So they're like, how about you work with John Congleton? And like, I was like, okay. So we did. Yeah, that's truly the whole story there. And then Albini was much the same way, because that was at a time when I didn't think we could do that, I was like, oh, well, nobody knows who we are, and why would we work with a producer that anyone's ever heard of? But our label was just like, what about Steve Albini? And I was like, okay, that's a thing we can do? Like, yeah, definitely. I love that guy.
Yeah, that's not really something you say no to, is it? Like,
no, yeah, it wasn't even on my mind. I was like, man, I figured we'll just like make it in my parents' basement. But Steve Albini was a step up from that.
What did they bring to the recording process?
Albini was pretty hands off. I guess they both were. But I think, the only real big difference between like them and Goodmanson or something was, I guess Goodmanson felt more like he was producing it or something, and the other guys were just sort of there to capture a moment. And I think Congleton might have wanted to do a little more to it, but we just sort of shut him down and didn't let that happen for whatever reason. So yeah, it was kind of just like Congleton had a way he wanted us to sound, which was a little less dry than the Albini record, but it wasn't like he was telling us how to play or anything. So both processes felt pretty similar, I think. The studios were different. We recorded in a weird studio for the Congleton one. It was in Hoboken, New Jersey, and it was called Water Music. But it was right after like a big hurricane had hit, this Hurricane Sandy. So, and no one told us this, but half the equipment in the studio was just broken. So we couldn't use most of it. And like part of like the desk that was mixing everything on was like broken. Things were just like not working that should be working. So we had that going against us, and then we couldn't leave the studio, or we couldn't go back in after like 6 o'clock. Right, like around then we pretty much were locked out, so we couldn't like play or do anything like after that time. It was weird. It was a weird time.
Why was it closed after 6?
I don't know. We just weren't allowed back in. Strange. We left, and then they would lock up, and there was like a room upstairs that we had to stay in. So we were in the studio, but we just couldn't go back down to the room where like all of our stuff was.
I think as well as the albums have progressed, the lyrics and vocals have come more to the fore. And I was wondering, do you have a process for writing lyrics? Has it changed over the years, maybe?
I think I just write them like earlier and earlier as the years have gone. Because like with the Attack on Memory, I think I didn't even know what I was going to sing or what the melodies even were necessarily until like we had to record them like in the studio. And then thought maybe a little bit more about them for the next record. And then like as I wrote the songs for this record, I kind of wrote like lyrics with them too. So that was like first time I've done that. And then working on new stuff beyond that, like recently, I'll definitely come up with lyrics and like melodies and stuff pretty much right away as soon as I make a song. So that's all kind of happening earlier. Yeah. I don't know why. I just like to always try to be doing something slightly different every time I write a song. So that's just adding to that, I guess.
In a number of interviews I've read that you've done as well, it seems to me that you try to emphasize that you have nothing to complain about. Why is that? Why do you feel the need to emphasize that?
In what context am I Am I not complaining?
It was to do with the lyrics, I think, because obviously the lyrics are quite personal. They're about personal experiences, and they're not always super positive. I've just read a number of interviews. I think one was with Vice, and it just seemed to me that it seemed to be a common thread that you kind of mention it, that you'd say, I've got nothing to complain about, but this song's about this particular situation.
Yeah. I guess because in general, I don't really have much to complain about. But I do. I mean, I do. I struggle with misplaced, directionless anxiety and like general fear of things all the time. So that's kind of what gets channeled into the songs, probably. And I wonder if someone maybe accused the songs of being like whiny or something at some point, and that just stuck with me. I don't remember so constantly saying I have nothing to complain about. Maybe I was hurt.
Maybe it just so happened that the couple of reviews or the couple of interviews that I looked at coincidentally mentioned
that
this.
Could be, yeah. I don't know. I guess I'll say it again. I got nothing to complain about. Yeah, things are okay. Yeah.
And you mentioned there as well that you thought that maybe at one point somebody had mentioned that the songs were whiny. And does what you read about Cloud Nothings have an impact on songwriting or how you approach the music?
I mean, I try not to really read anything about the band anymore. I did at first, but people just write a lot of stuff anytime anything with the band happens, and it's just like I don't gain anything from reading it necessarily, like if I read a review of the record, I don't like think about the record differently. I just sort of read a review of the record. I don't really do that anymore. Back when I did like read a lot of our stuff and like search Twitter for the band name and all that, which I definitely don't do anymore, it would just sort of like bum me out a lot of the time, because even like a good review would have like stuff in it where I'm just like, well, that's not right, about like what I thought something would be. So it's just like it gets confusing if you think about ways other people interpret what you do, or at least for me, for what I do. So I'd like to kind of keep it all in a weird little bubble.
You feel it kind of clouds your vision or something,
I guess, or it just like makes me think too much about something that I don't necessarily think I need to be using brain space on.
I've done a number of these interviews now, and I was talking to Nick DeSalvo in Elder, a stoner rock band, and at the end of our conversation, we were talking all about the creative process, and he was like, I don't like to talk about this type of thing too much, because then I just get kind of lost in talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, I like talking about like my songwriting process and all that, but my only fear is always that it's going to be really boring. like someone will listen to it and be like, wow, that was really boring. Like, I don't know if I would ever listen to that guy talk again. I do spend a lot of time thinking about it because it's all I do, or it's not all I do, but it's what I like to focus, every day around. So I do think about it a lot, and to the point where it gets almost like academic and dry if I really get talking about like how I do what I do. So I do worry about boring people. Yeah.
There was a quote actually I read as well, and I thought you might be interested in this. This is again from a couple of interviews I read and some things that you talked about. So maybe again that this is totally irrelevant, but I'll give it a go. There was this psychologist called Carl Roger, and he said, "What is most personal is most universal." In an interview, I saw that you said that you felt that kind of by writing personal music that you were trying to make it universal as well.
Yeah, no, sure. That's very true. I like a lot of music that's very like insular and like a weird like world building kind of record, where you hear something and you're like, oh, that's really weird. Like, how did that person make that? What is that song about? Like, they're naming like weird things in their town that have nothing to do with anything, and I like stuff like that. But I think when I write songs, for whatever reason, I like to write stuff that I think other people might relate to in some way. That seems important to me to do, I think, because it's an easy way for me to relate to other people, which I don't necessarily do so well outside of the songwriting area. So yeah, I think writing stuff that's very personal and kind of revealing in a way does sort of open up a more, again, like universal approach to stuff, just because everyone has those sort of feelings that I tend to sing about. I guess like sort of just like I already said, like anxiety and sort of just like loneliness and all that kind of fun stuff. That's what I like to sing about generally, for whatever reason. But yeah, it seems like stuff that other people think about or feel too, and maybe don't talk about necessarily. Yeah,
That's it. I think it's a quite an important thing because, like, I mean, all my favorite bands when I was growing up would have been bands that I'm big on lyrics, you see, and I would have identified with the lyrics. For me, a band that goes from being like a band that I quite like to going to a band that I love is kind of to do with the lyrics and the content.
Mm-hmm.
If you can kind of feel like it's a bit cliched, but they're kind of like singing about your life.
Yeah, man, totally.
Particularly for younger people, they might not have the opportunity because, you know, when you're growing up, you kind of feel like, oh, I'm the only one who feels like this. And you kind of try and keep it to yourself and you feel like a bit of a weirdo. It's not until you're a bit older that you realize that everybody's just as messed up as you are.
Yeah, totally. No. Yeah, when I was a kid, music was basically like my friend. That was like, I grew up in like a weird, actually something I've been doing lately this is pretty bizarre. But I've been like driving around. It's not bizarre. I've been driving around like where I grew up, which isn't that far from where I live now. But I've just been driving around there trying to like just think about it. Cause I don't think about like growing up too much. Cause I didn't have like a great time or anything. I was just a kid who was like kind of lonely and like listened to a lot of music and like play guitar. But I've been like driving around trying to like just remember stuff about growing up because I have kind of a bad memory, and I'm just wondering if I like will see something and be like, oh, I have this like good memory about this thing, but I don't. I haven't had any like important sort of nostalgic moment driving around. I'll just sort of like drive around and be like, man, that was kind of weird, and then I'll go home. So I don't know what that has to do with my creative process. Probably nothing. But it was just, being a kid must be kind of weird because I don't remember it.
Yeah, it's kind of maybe a thing you kind of block out a little bit.
Maybe I did. That's also what I was thinking. So I was like, well, maybe if I drive around, I'll have some, horrible repressed memory show up, and I'm like, oh, that explains why I'm, my age and yelling in front of people for money. Yeah, I get it.
Despite growing up being a bit difficult, I'm delighted that I'm not growing up in 2017. I'm bloody delighted I'm not 15 now, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't even know what that would be like.
Because all this stuff that you've forgotten, this isn't going to be forgotten for lots of people growing up now. It's documented, online documented. Which is terrifying.
Yeah, it's scary. That is terrifying. Yeah, everyone has to, I don't know what the end result of that is. That has to like just stop at some point, right? That's so scary. I feel like the internet has to stop.
Yeah.
Someone's got to stop it.
Someone's got to be like, this is enough. Take it down.
No more Instagram, kids. Yeah. Come on now. I mean, they got rid of Vine.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. So, I mean, Vine's gone. Yeah. I guess the old Vines are still up there, but maybe slowly as the social medias die, the documents of children's past will die with them. Isn't that nice?
That would be beautiful, I think, to be honest. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any ideas about where you're going to take Cloud Nothings from here?
Yeah, I have a couple different sort of things I've been goofing around with. I've been recording a lot lately, actually, because I do want to put out a record next year, I think. I have some like super poppy bangers, if you will. Like there's that kind of road I guess I could go down. And then there's also like I've been getting into like synths and that kind of thing lately, and like I have some like more aggressive post-punky synthy stuff that I could maybe see like making a whole record of too. Right now I'm just trying out a bunch of different things, and I'm sure it'll all end up like just melting together at some point, and that'll be what the next record sounds like.
I was wondering as well, you made that record with Waves with Nathan Williams.
Yeah.
How was that different from working within the Cloud Nothings environment?
It was very different. And it was kind of like the start of me. It was like practice for Life Without Sound almost, like the whole writing alone thing. Because the way that would work was, or at least the way I remember it working, was Nathan would it was just me and Nathan and his brother, Nathan from Waves. So Nathan would play something, and that would kind of be the base of the song, and then like me and his brother would just sort of add parts to it, and kind of just like structure it in a way, and then that would be it, and he would come back in and like do some other stuff. We would just keep like trading back and forth until there was a song there. And it was the first time I ever like did anything. It was all in. Oh, did he use Ableton? It was like Ableton or Logic, just some like computer program thing. But like I had never really used that to record rock stuff, basically. So it was kind of interesting to see people do that, and that kind of made me want to try that for our record, which I did. It was fun. I like that record. It's like it's short and nice. Yeah.
Big thanks to Dylan from Cloud Nothings for talking to me, and thank you for listening. Each episode of the Creative Process podcast takes a considerable amount of planning, research, editing, and that's even before publishing and promotion. If you like what you hear, please share via Facebook or Twitter, support us via Patreon, or subscribe and review the podcast on the platform of your choice. This will be a huge help, which will enable the Creative Process podcast and Overblown to continue to grow. See you down the front.